town boards and persons in the affected areas hereby makes the following recommendations. Approval of petitions as listed, dated this 26th day of April 2021, Blaine Paulson, Secretary. Moving on to ordinance number 2021. 3. Amending the zoning, official zoning map, whereas Jefferson County Board of Supervisors has heretofore been petitioned to amend the official zoning map of Jefferson County, and whereas petitions numbers as listed were referred to Jefferson County Planning and Zoning Committee for public hearing on April 15, 2021, and whereas the proposed amendments have been given due consideration by the Board of Supervisors in open session, now therefore be ordained that Jefferson County Board of Supervisors does amend the official zoning map of Jefferson County as follows, as listed on pages 35 and 36. I move for approval of this ordinance.
Second.
Second from Supervisor Paulson. Questions and discussion? Start with Mr. Christensen as hand first. One second. I know where we're going here. 1 second. Go ahead, John.
I'll abstain from this since it's a conflict.
Thank you, John. All right. Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to divide the question and to consider item R4309A-21 separately.
Second.
That's my motion.
Second.
There is a second from.
Menard.
I didn't see it.
So, if I can speak
Did you
to
get that
that.
second recorded? All right.
Yes, I did.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So the reason I'm asking for this item to be separated like that is just to give us a chance to discuss it further, understand it better, since there's been quite a bit of interest in the Palmyra area, both by the petitioner and by others. And what I did see when I was, or noticed when I was at the public hearing in April, was quite a number of people who were opposed, who gave very thoughtful reasons and understandable reasons. In addition, these are the questions I think I have actually for Matt Zangel, is where I'm going with this. The town of Palmyra apparently made a decision that they reversed. And they felt that they had incorrect information, and so that they would prefer to take a look at it again, I guess. The zoning change affects an environmental corridor. We do have a history of protecting environmental corridors, and the DNR also made a case for protecting that land and not allowing the zoning change. And what I want to refer back to is the report that we just read, that Supervisor Jacob just read to us, and it says, let me get back to this page. In the first paragraph, it says, notice thereof having been given and duly advised of the wishes of the town boards and persons in the areas affected, hereby makes the following recommendations. Well, it does seem a bit contradictory to me, where there are a lot of there's a lot of discussion and evidence and concern about allowing this rezoning by both the town and persons who are affected, and yet that does not seem to be duly considered and then turned down. So I'm not making a recommendation, but I sure would like a little better explanation of how we got to this point. Thanks for the time.
We've got a request and a second on the floor to separate the petition industrial from industrial to A3. I'll take a roll. Any further discussion on that? Non-debatable? Okay, thank you. So we'll take a roll call vote on separating it.
Really?
Yes, you bet. We talked about making sure our stuff worked.
go ahead.
My screen just went to present. Oh, there we go.
For those of you supervisors that have been on Zoom in the past, now you know some of the difficulties that are going on here, so you gotta better understand how we put up against.
We have 21 yes, 6 no, 2 abstain, and 1 absent.
So it has been separated. Okay. So this has been separated out, so this, what we will vote on right now is the rest of the amendments, the main question, and then we'll deal with the separated one. So ordinance number 3, minus the last petition, we will have again, we're going to do all roll call votes tonight. We want to make sure this system is working properly. So, this will be on ordinance 2021-3 minus the petition that was separated. Any discussion on this? Discussion, questions on the remainder of the petitions? Seeing none, we'll give Auditor time to get the board ready to go.
There's one to present. It's a push and they'll bring it back to the screen.
Okay, try to vote.
There we go.
Oh, now they show.
Okay, we have 27 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain, 1 absent.
Now we will act on the separated petition. Discussion. Supervisor Jacob.
Mr. Chair, thank you. To explain a little bit of the reasoning that, I'm gonna say most of the committee had, this, facility, if you also looked in your packet you had on your desk tonight, showed you that, this was originally an industrial site, still is zoned 100% industrial unless we change it tonight. And Mehrings have the right and does have a plan to go ahead and put 8 storage units on that property. He thought it would be a nicer buffer from his event center that we approved with the conditional use to have a little residential there, so you wouldn't have storage units right up to the state forest parkland. And I kind of think too, I mean, I drive through the Kettle Moraine all day long. Actually today I think I was through the Kettle Moraine all the way over to Genesee, all the way over by Dousman, 4 different trips today. Can't imagine why somebody would be so opposed to a nice residential snuck into a wooded acreage, because I see them all the way along Highway 18, County Road ZZ, Highway 59, all over this beautiful state and adjoining counties. The petitioner has right, if this is turned down, I'm gonna bet money, he's gonna turn around and have a check in Mr. Zangel's hand tomorrow morning for whatever the cost is for his storage units. There will be no discussion by the county board on this. I think we're actually down zoning it from industrial to residential, way lesser impact to the township, county, and the state forest in the long run, because they're not gonna clear cut all the trees being residential. They are gonna leave up several of them so they can have a nice nature area. Someone that was commenting before made the remark about cutting through properties. Well, I specifically see all these roads when I'm driving the state forest, private land. If people don't know how to read signs and stay off from private land, you're trespassing. I don't know where, I suppose if it's gonna be industrial, they gotta put up a chain link fence around it to keep people out of it. What's gonna look more aesthetically pleasing than a nice house, a nice backyard where somebody can actually live and enjoy it? So that's my comment to it. I would just as soon see everybody kind of go along. We thought this through. We had a long discussion on our decision meeting if we would approve it. The town board did give their blessing at the top, before the time of the public hearing. The public hearing was right after the April election, so one member changed the vote, and then that's where some of that discrepancies came in. So now you got, a new board trying to change what an old board did before. You never know which way to think of what way somebody's reason why they changed the vote at that point. So I'm still gonna vote in favor of this petition, and I hope the rest of you will too.
Questions, discussion? Supervisor White.
Had a legal question for Corporation Counsel. So we have here the town board, looks like passed a couple of their resolutions on May 7th. One was to extend their time for disapproval by 20 days, and the other was to rescind their previous approval of it. Does that have any legal effect on this petition? And I suppose to go along with that, can a town board legally rescind their approval of a zoning petition?
I can answer that question. I looked into that issue. This is Blair Ward, Corporation Counsel, appearing by Zoom. The research that I did, I found an Attorney General opinion that said that a town could rescind approval. So when I received the rescission of the approval, I had no question that it was a valid rescission, and it was filed with the county clerk. So my opinion and my advice to the county board is to proceed as if the town has rescinded its approval of this rezoning petition.
Other questions? Supervisor Smith.
I'm wondering what the value of this property is, and if possibly there's
were to purchase it, set it aside?
Don't have that answer. The DNR has not answered us on
You know
this
what the
topic.
value of this property is?
Pardon?
The value that the property assessed at?
I don't know, do we have that handy, Matt? No? I don't have that. Supervisor Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Several speakers tonight spoke about an environmental corridor on this property or adjacent to this property. Could Mr. Zengel fill me in a little bit on the impact of that?
Mr. Zangle, can you answer that question for Supervisor Kelly? About the environmental corridor?
Sure. The southern portion of that property is mapped as environmental corridor. It's my understanding that that mapping occurred back a couple comprehensive plans ago. Basically, how I understand that environmental corridor was created is it took a variety of environmental features and lumped it together into what became the environmental corridor. For example, environmental corridor that they're discussing, or I believe they're referencing, shows up on our GIS system, which includes large woods over 10 acres, wetlands, floodplains, steep slopes. So when items like that were identified, they were lumped together into what was known as the environmental corridor area. With this one being adjacent to the Kettle Moraine State Forest, the southern unit, being majority wooded, some pasture in there, I would imagine that was brought over into the southern part of this property where there's a little woods that extends north from the forest land.
Can you build within the corridor structure?
Multi-point question, if you will. Yes, you can. If the zoning is correct, they could build what they need to build. For example, the petitioner or the property owner or any property owner within environmental corridor could build a structure that meets that zoning classification. So in this case, with it being zoned industrial, the fact that it's environmental corridor has zero effect basically on it. If it was in a wetland or floodplain, we'd have those to deal with, but with this property not being a wetland or floodplain, I could issue a permit tomorrow for industrial structure. The committee will review the environmental corridor when they're rezoning items, mainly when they're coming out of A1 zoning district.
Thank you.
We have two people on Zoom with their hands up. Mary Roberts has her hands up. Let's start with Mary, and then I recognize you have your hand up too, Kurt.
Thank you for recognizing me. I was sent the petition to amend the zoning ordinance, and the person that sent it to me said it's not even signed, so it isn't a legal document at this time. No one signed it, at least that's what I have. And also my concern, of course, is that has the DNR really, have they approved of this? Because it is protected area for the wetlands and for natural land. So I'm just wondering why this is an issue when it wasn't even signed.
I'm going to have Matt address this one as well.
Sure, I can answer the signature question on the application. When my department receives an application, we review it and then send it out to the town as soon as possible. We try and get the application to the town as soon as possible to limit our time delay between ourselves, the town, and the applicants. We want to make sure the process is already lengthy, so we want to make sure we get that as soon as possible. When my staff reviewed it, they saw it wasn't signed. We made a note in the file to have the applicant sign it at his next appearance or when he came into the office next. From there, we sent it out to the town so the town could act on it. The town did receive the non-signed application. After that, after we sent it out to the town, the applicant did come in and sign it. I do have the original file with the application here if anyone needs to see the original signature. As for DNR, there were some DNR that showed opposed at the public hearing. We have also received some written public comments from. Since then, Corporation Counsel Blair Ward has reached out to DNR, and we have not received much of a response back. I'll let Blair elaborate if you would like to.
You have anything
But
to
it
add?
is part of the Kettle Moraine, right?
It is an industrial, privately owned industrial zone.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Larry, you have anything to add to that?
Well, I did contact the DNR. My biggest concern with this whole rezoning was what's already been mentioned by Supervisor Jekyll, is that we have a parcel of property that's in an industrial zone being zoned to allow being requested to be rezoned to a residential area. And my concern was that does the DNR and do others really understand what's happening with this proposed zoning amendment? A house is proposed, or houses are proposed to be built instead of other industrial uses on this property. And I thought that the proposed rezoning was more consistent with preserving the area, so I emailed the person from the DNR who had objected to the rezoning, and my email included all of the uses that could be done in a zone for industrial uses, to make sure she was aware of what exactly she was objecting to. And she responded basically saying she was aware, or something to those effects, and offering to discuss with me earlier today. I wasn't available, so I asked Matt to give her a call back, and he was not able to get through. So the point is, I made it clear what the property is zoned, what the uses can do, or what uses there can be in an industrial zone. So the DNR is aware of the uses. So that's basically the point that I wanted to make.
Thank you, Blair. Kirk, you had your, Kirk, had your hand up. Can we get him on?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I've heard some good arguments on both sides of this issue here, but it seems to me that if the town board has legally rescinded its approval, I think the appropriate thing to do would be to not to act on it here and to remand it back to be considered by the Palmyra Town Board. So I would make a motion to that effect.
Do I have a second to that effect? The motion was to remand it back to the town board, but we'll have to have a further discussion on this.
I second that.
And we have a second. But at this point, I want people to understand the legal ramifications of whether you deny this, send it back, approve it, let the town board veto it afterwards. There's different ways to deal with this. And I would like to hear from our corporate counsel, and letting you know before we proceed with a further discussion on that motion, what your options are.
The county board can do anything it wants to with this motion in the same manner that it did with the other rezoning petitions that approved. In other words, the county is not restricted at all from taking any particular action. The county can approve the rezoning petition as presented, can amend it, can reject it, can send it back to committee so the town can further consider the proposed rezoning. So basically, the options are there for the county board to do what it wants, but I think it's important for the county board to be aware that if the county board does approve the rezoning as presented, by state law, the town has 40 days to veto it. They can veto the zoning amendment, and therefore it will never go into effect. So if there is a desire to have further town input or action, one way of doing that would be approving it, the zoning amendment, and then let the town veto it if the county board is inclined to approve it. So the point is, it's not done tonight if the county board approves the rezoning. The town still has an option to reject the zoning amendment.
And we would vote, and what would be our vote then if the board says to rescind, if they vote to rescind it, to listen to what the township said, and they asked to have it rescinded, what would our vote be there? Would we still, if it came back to the committee, would that be our vote, or would it be, or would it be a denial vote?
That really is up to the county board. The county board is not restricted in any action that it would take based on the town rescinding its approval. It's a preliminary action by the town designed to give the county input into what the town is seeking or what they want to see with the rezoning. So I'm not sure I understand your question. Maybe you want to restate it, but again, the county board is not limited.
I understand that. Our question is what, I think we are getting the feeling from folks here that they'd like to have the township have another look at it. That's just generally the feeling I'm seeing here. Is there more than one way to get at that, I guess is what I'm saying. We mentioned the first one where we approve it, and then we go to the town board vetoes it, and then they deal with it from that point. To just say, go with rescinding, I don't know what we're voting on. That's the point. I don't know how to word that amendment, because that's a town board action of rescinding. And the motion on the floor is, I vote to rescind. That doesn't do us anything. To send back to the committee?
Well, I think the motion would be more appropriately stated as referring back to committee to allow further discussions, to allow further input from the town, but the town has already voted to rescind their approval. I don't know what can happen, or what would happen, or what should happen if it does go back to committee, or if the county board chooses to delay action on this. If the county board chooses to delay action, for what purpose? What purpose would that serve?
Okay. All right. We still have a motion on the floor.
Maybe could clarify his motion a little bit more.
Yes.
To give us a better idea of what exactly he's seeking.
Who made the original motion? So what was your purpose?
Well, really to give deference to the fact that the Palmyra Town Board has rescinded their approval of this rezoning petition. So maybe a more properly worded to be consistent with Corporation Council's opinion would be to table it, although I'm not sure that's exactly what I mean either. Maybe in light of this discussion, a better way, in light of the fact that Corporation Council has said that the town board would have 40 days if we approved it, then to rescind. So maybe it's better to take a vote on it, because we know the town board is going to get, it's not going to be shut out of the process. They're going to get their say on it as well. So I guess I would withdraw my motion to remand or table and just kick back into general discussion.
Supervisor David had his hand up first.
I would move to postpone then. I think that's what we've done in the past in the zoning committee. I was on there for 18 years. And if we postpone it, it just gives us more time to think about it, gives the town more time to react to it. It seems like the town feels short-shrifted in this particular rezoning, and maybe that's their own fault, I don't know. But one of the things that keeps our land use strong is keeping the towns happy, because ratification by a majority of the townships is necessary for us to have county zoning. And if we infuriate and make little of the town's opinions of things, their opinion of the county zoning will suffer. And when the 2020 land use plan was put in place originally back in 2000, I believe it originally was not passed by the townships and had to go through quite a mitigation process to get the whole thing up and running. So I think the relationship with the townships is really an important thing, and would recommend that what we do is postpone it, give the town another kick at the cat, so to speak, and we can move on from there with a little bit more input and some of the concerns being addressed and addressed. So I move to postpone.
Is it actually postponed for the board, or send it back to committee? That's all I would think.
Whichever you prefer, whichever Blair prefers is more regular, let's do it that way, but one way or the other.
Because I think it needs to go back to the committee for further discussion if you're going to go that way. that's what we've done in the past. Just postpone it, means it never goes back to committee, it just comes back to the board next week. But let's,
And maybe the zoning committee did that, and for them it was the proper thing, but here at the county, I defer.
Is there a second to that motion?
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Supervisor Lund can't withdraw his motion because it's been seconded. And it belongs to, it's on the table, it belongs to the board. And so is the postponed motion, is it addressing Kirk Lund's motion or the original motion?
To me, it's a separate motion. So do we, was there, who had the second on, I forgot, I don't have that written down.
Point of order.
Second, one second. Who seconded, So what's your feeling, Anita? That's understood. Basically, what we're coming down to here is motions on the floor. And it's cutting off any other discussion here right now.
I would like to, can I withdraw my second?
Okay.
Okay, I'll withdraw my second.
All right. Now, that's settled. Now, we have a second motion on the floor, or a motion on the floor to return to committee, apparently. Yes, that's what. Do I have a second to that?
Second.
Second. Okay. We have to deal with the amendment first, come back to the original question. There's a point of order from Mr. Schultz?
No, my point of order was the second could also withdraw their second, so that's.
Okay, so now there's a motion on the floor to postpone, or not postpone, excuse me, my fault, to return this to committee.
Yes.
Or to refer back to committee.
I want to talk.
So that's on, so we have a motion and a second. Mr. Schultz, you had your hand up first. You're next, Mr. Paulson.
I would like to speak in opposition to returning this committee. We are muddling this way beyond what we need to do. If we think it's a good idea, let's pass it. Let's pass the change. I understand that it goes to the town board and they have the final say. So what's the problem? If we think this is a good idea, and frankly, I do, from an environmental standpoint, from an aesthetic standpoint, changing this from an industrial to residential makes a world of sense to me. But let's act on it one way or the other. If we pass this, then it goes to the town board. Let's not muddle it. We've done this so much. Oh, let's send it back. We don't want to deal with it. We're all confused. Let's do what we think is right tonight, and then it goes to the town board, and they can act.
Supervisor Paulson, you're up next.
Yeah. Here, there's no need to go, he covered it. Mr. Schultz covered it.
Supervisor Neal, that's all.
I agree with Dick, but I would like to add one thing, and I would like a proper description of what could be the worst case industrial thing that could be built on that site right now. George is talking about some storage lockers, but I'm envisioning a factory with a chimney on top of it could possibly be there, correct?
Yes, I think Matt's going to get the zoning book with the whole list of things that could go in.
Yeah, so we're not talking specifically about some storage lockers versus some houses. We're talking about a strict industrial use versus a residential.
And this industrial zone, because I sit on the zoning committee, this industrial zone has been there for a long time before we had a comprehensive plan. I'm sure somebody else had their hand up first, you know, come back. Supervisor White.
So in light of Corporation Council's comments, if we want to give the town board a say, I would say we want to approve it, because ultimately, I think both sides want resolution on here, one way or another, and the only way the town board is actually going to have the ability to give their say, and if that is vetoing it, so be it. but they can't do that until we act. So I'm thinking that the town board would like us to approve it, to put the ball back in their court, so they can ultimately do what they think is most appropriate.
Okay, Supervisor Christensen.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say I appreciate the point that Supervisor Jekyll made. The approach of what's the least harm that you could do depending on how we approach this. I think that there is an opportunity because there's so much goodwill about this in terms of protecting the state natural area and so on. On all party sides, it sounds like to me that there's probably a resolution, maybe that's not the right word, there's probably a solution that would include a best case where maybe the town could ask for some conditions from the builder about size or location or something like that, and get around the worst imaginary things that could happen. So that may be able to be done if it gets approved, and the town has another opportunity to either veto it and let in that time of vetoing it, negotiate or talk with the owner about a solution. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, if I could just quickly answer Supervisor Nealon's question. And Mr. Waremeyer brought up the ordinance for the industrial zone on the board, or on the overhead projector there. What he's showing is the principal uses, so those are permitted as of today. The applicant can come in tomorrow and ask for a zoning permit for those uses, followed by the conditional uses, which is the simple conditional use permit through the planning and zoning committee. So those are some examples of what could be permitted on the property.
Other questions? First of all, then, we're voting. We have a motion on the floor for an amendment to return it to the committee. Any further discussion on that? All in favor of that motion to return this zoning amendment to the committee would be a roll call vote.
Okay, you can go ahead and vote. We have 2 yes, 26 no, 1 abstain, and 1 absent.
All right, so we're back to the original motion on the floor, which is to take this petition and approve or deny it. Right now, the motion on the floor is to approve it. Any further discussion on that? Supervisor Neal.
I would like to point out, it said paper mills.
Okay, so move to approve. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second from Supervisor Schultz. Okay, it's on the floor. Move to approve. All right.
I don't got
Okay, you can go ahead. We have 26 yes, 2 no, 1 abstain, 1 absent.
It is approved. All right, thank you. Would anybody like 5 minutes to stand up and move their legs, walk around, go to the toilet? Maybe 10. Or maybe 10. Would we reconvene at 9 o'clock?